Hi there, this is a quick video which goes through some of the key concepts around changing the Australian Constitution. This is in chapter 2.3 of your textbook. You can access the textbook online, which I'm doing now, through the website jackplus.com.au. If you do this, you just type in the number on the inside cover of your textbook and you can access it online. And the great thing about the online textbook is you can search through it here and you can also look at the definitions of highlighted words instantly. So let's have a look here at this concept of changing the Constitution. The Constitution can be changed according to section 128. Now, back 100 years ago, when people were creating the Constitution, they had to make a way for it to be changed so that it could be a document that lasted a long time. I mean, this is almost more than 100 years old, and it's still really relevant. So what they did was, in section 128, they said that you had to hold a referendum to change or amend the wording of the Constitution. Now, a referendum, if I'll just go here, it says here that it's a process through which changes can be made. Electors vote for or against a particular change. For a change to take effect, it must be supported by a majority of voters and a majority of states. Everyone that's over 18 that's eligible to vote has to vote in a referendum. Now, an example of a referendum which wasn't successful, unfortunately, was the one back in 1999 when the Australian people voted to decide whether they wanted a republic. And a republic was basically where there would be no Queen and no Governor General anymore, and there would be a President of Australia, just like in the United States of America. How did this change or proposed change go ahead? Well, it's specified in section 128, and it starts off with the first step, which is a proposal for change. And that can come from states, parliamentary commissions, committees, royal commissions, or from community pressure. The only problem, just before we get into how to change it with the process, is how difficult it is to change. Because of this formula that section 128 outlines, it means that out of the 44 proposals for change that the Constitution has gone through, only 8 have been successful. So it starts off with the first one, which is the suggestion for a change to the wording of the Australian Constitution. This is just, it's a bit small. I'll go back here. So the change to the wording is then drafted into a bill. You all know how a bill is passed through Parliament, so it has to pass through the majority of both houses. Now, if it does pass through, if the change to the wording goes through in a bill and it's passed by a majority of both houses, then between 2 to 6 months later, the referendum is presented to all enrolled voters in each state and territory. If we go back here though, what if it's passed by one house, so it's passed by the House of Representatives, but it's not passed by the Senate? Then the Governor General can submit the proposal to a referendum straight out, and it goes there, or it can lapse if that doesn't happen. Now, after the bill is passed by Parliament, it's submitted to the voters. And this is where section 128 comes in. It says, to be successful, the referendum must be passed by a majority of voters in Australia, a majority of voters in a majority of states, and a majority of votes in any state adversely affected by the referendum proposal. Adversely means negatively affected. If that is passed, then the bill, as it goes through, is presented to the Governor General for royal assent, and the wording of the Constitution is changed. If the referendum is not passed by this, then the referendum fails and the Constitution remains unchanged. Let's take a look at what that actually means, though. So, the Australian Constitution can only be changed with the support of a majority of Australian voters and a majority of voters in at least 4 states, which is the majority of the states. We call this a double majority. A double majority. Oops. Okay, so we call this a double majority. I'll just put that in. All right, it's not going to let me write that. Basically, to change change the Constitution, you need a double majority. So let's see the first scenario. If the majority of Australian voters, so more than 50% of people that are eligible to vote yes for the change, and the majority of voters in at least 4 states vote for it, so if you have 4 states, all the people in there vote, a majority vote for it, then it passes and the Constitution is changed. The second scenario is that out of everyone that's eligible to vote in Australia, less than half of them agree to the change, but a majority of voters in at least 4 states agree to the change. Well, then that still doesn't mean the Constitution is changed. And the third scenario is that yes, you have the majority of Australian voters who agree, but the majority of voters, you don't have the majority of voters in at least 4 states, and that's a third scenario. As you can see, it's quite hard to get to that first scenario, which is one of the reasons why it's been so hard to change the Constitution. We go back to the textbook now. So at this point in time, you should stop the video, have a read through of what I've tried to explain there, and you should be able to now answer the following questions. What is a referendum? And outline the purpose adopted for a referendum under outline the process adopted for a referendum under section 128 of the Australian Constitution.